아주 망어기 야채 신신한 게
First of all, I would like to offer my greetings to all of the members of the Sangha, the monks and nuns who are listening to this Marngok summer teachings, as well as the Tulku's teachers, geshes, as well as all of the lay men and women who are listening. I'd like to offer you my warm greetings. Now, we have been speaking about the Bhikshu Mahadeva, the Bhikshu who caused the first this original split into schools, the Bhikshu Mahadeva. So this is the topic that we've been speaking about. No, I did mention about the 5 views of Mahadeva, but today I thought it'd be good to give another explanation of these to clarify them. Now, the reason why we need to clarify them, I will explain later. Now, the explanation that I'd like to give is from a student of the master Tang Xuanzan named Kui Ji. So Kui Ji, and sometimes he's called Sun Da Shi. Sun means this is the name of monster, Da Sun, so this is Sun Da Shi, so he's called the great master of Sun Monastery. And there is a commentary on the Yogacara levels. It's a summary of them, and in this he speaks a little bit about Mahadeva, and according to his opinion, the Bhikshu Mahadeva was not as wicked as was mentioned the other day. And likewise, the other elders criticized and slandered him, and so this is that they criticized him like this, but it's not that he necessarily was as bad as they say. And so we have he taught the 5 points, or the 5 views of Mahadeva. So ask, what is the explanation that he gave? And then there's a question of how the elders didn't listen to it and criticized him. And so this is very clear here, and so I thought I would explain it. I didn't mention it the other day, and I think if we go through this, then I think there are many great important points we can understand. Now, within the summary of the Yogacara levels by Kui Ji, they'll talk about the 5 views, the 5 points of Mahadeva. There are these 5 different principles, 5 different sections. And in the first one, what Mahadeva said is, I think if I load this is good. Mahadeva's explanation, Arhats have exhausted the afflictions and the defilements. So the Arhats have exhausted both the afflictions and the defilements. However, there's the Mara of the child of gods who can create obstacles, or they might soil the robes with the impure. So it may appear as if they have defilements. There are times when this happens. And so when he explained this, then the elders, those of the seniority, just didn't listen when they said that Mahadeva is this deluded, ordinary being. He's very stupid. And he doesn't understand that afflictions arise because of the presence of the object. And in particular, did inappropriate thoughts at night, he's spoiled his clothes with impurity. He ejaculated. He had a nocturnal emission, and this happened. But what he blamed it on was on the interference of the Mara of the child of the gods. And so it is due to this that the dispute arose. And so when you think about the 5 views, the first is that that the views that the arhats can be deceived or fooled by the Mara, the child of the gods. Now, there's actually something very similar to this in the Treasury of the Abhidharma. What it says in the Treasury of Abhidharma, what it says in the root text is by misrepresenting himself as a great being, great Brahma deluded Ashvajit. And so if we look at this point in Vasubandhu's own auto-commentary on this, it says, when the Buddha Ajita was resting in samadhi, in solitude, he wondered, where the four essence ceased. He disappeared from this world and went to the realm of the four comes. And he says that basically that this is this discussion about how he went to ask Brahma about this, and Brahma deceived him about it. And we say that Brahma deceived him. And where does this story come from? It comes primarily from a sutra called the Sutra to the Aggregate of Discipline. Now, the way this story goes is this Bhikshu Ashvati. So here's an arhat already, right? So here's this arhat Ajita. He was resting in solitude, all alone, resting in samadhi. And during that time, what he thought about was, what do the four elements, good elements, cease in the end? Where do they disappear? Where do they go away? So he had this sort of doubt, or this question, this doubt. Because he had this doubt, question, then he immediately disappeared from this world. And then went to the four great kings and of the realms. And then he went up through all the god realms, through the realm of the 33 and so forth, and eventually got to the Brahma realm. So he went through, he asked all of the gods of the desire realm. They weren't able to answer, so he went up to the gods of the formless, and he went up to the Brahma's abode. And he asked them the question. When he asked these, and the god says, we don't know. They all said, we don't know. So then finally, the gods of the Brahma's realm said, there's nothing that the god Brahma doesn't know, so you better ask him. And so then at the end, so Brahma said, appeared he had 5 faces. If you looked at him, he looked like a little boy. And so Ashvajit met him. And then Ashvajit explained his doubt and asked him about it. Said, in the end, where do all the great elements cease? And he asked him at this, then the Brahma said, what he said is, oh, I'm Brahma, I'm great Brahma, I'm the Lord, I'm the creator. And he said, he didn't answer the question directly. Instead, he just pretended like he was incredible and made this answer. And when he gave that answer, then what Ashvajit said is, yeah, whether or not you're Sampa, whether you're the Lord and Creator, I don't care. That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was, I didn't ask you about whether or not you're Brahma. But I asked you, in the end, where do the 4 elements cease? That's what I asked you. And when he asked Brahma to get this, then Brahma asked about that, and Brahma said, I'm the same. I'm Brahma, I'm great Brahma, the Lord. And he said this twice. And then he said that again. He wouldn't give a direct answer. Then the end, then the 3rd time, and in the end, Brahma was like out of things. He took Ashvajit by hand, he took him someplace where there was no one else. So when there weren't that many gods around, he took him this like silent with, and he brought him there. And what Sampa said is, he said, all of my retinue, he's like Brahma, right? So all of my retinue, he said, think that, I'm Brahma, and think that there's nothing that I don't know or nothing that I can't see. That's what they believe. And so if my retinue, if I were to say that I don't know in front of them, I can't say that. But the main point is that I don't know in the end where the 4 elements cease. I just don't know. But actually, you made a mistake in asking the question. It's your problem, your fault. The Buddha's alive, right? Because the Buddha's alive. Why are you coming to ask me the question? What's the reason why? The way you're asking the wrong person. And when Brahma said this, then Ashvajit then disappeared from Brahma's realm. And then he came to the Buddha. When he got to the Buddha, then he said to the Buddha, where do the 4 where do the four elements cease? And when he asked the Buddha this, and what the Buddha said was, first they cease in the formless realm, and in the end they cease when you achieve parinirvana, that remainder. That's when they disappear. That's when they disappear. That's when they cease. So in brief, what this story shows is that Brahma pretended that he knew everything, and he fooled Ashvajit. He tried to fool Ashvajit. I think he couldn't answer Ashvajit's answer, but he didn't. But he couldn't, even though he couldn't. He pretended he could answer, and he said, "I'm Brahma. I'm great Brahma, the Lord, the Creator." So he tried to fool him. So we see if we look at this story, then we see that sometimes the things that the arahats do not know about, that they can be deceived about, and that there's a way that they actually can be deceived to a certain extent. And for this reason, you can't say that categorically these words are categorically false, because it says this in the Treasure of Abhidhamma, and this is a text of the foundation vehicles. It's according to their explanations, right? It's a text of the foundation vehicles. Now the second of Mahadeva's views is I've missed the. So Mahadeva, there are two types of ignorance: afflicted and unafflicted ignorance. Our hearts are completely free of afflicted ignorance, but they still have unafflicted ignorance. The elders slighted him. So here, what Mahadeva said, the way he's explaining it is that there's a verse that he said. He's giving explanation of his verse. So the verse about the five points, right? So he's explaining that. And so we're talking about explaining unknowing. So unknowing, so basically there are two different types of unknowing or ignorance: afflicted and unafflicted ignorance. These two types. The arhats are completely free of afflicted ignorance, but they still have the unafflicted ignorance, or the unknowing, you could say. So this is the explanation that he made, but the elders, the senior monks, said to him, well, they cited him, the deluded ordinary being, Mahadeva, he's ignorant, he doesn't understand the meaning of what the Buddha said. He says that even noble beings have unafflicted ignorance. And so that they don't have, they said that they don't have any unafflicted ignorance. And so here, this is something that we need to think about when you think about whether Mahadeva's explanation is right or not. Now, if we examine this, there's also a word in the Treasure of Abhidhamma where it says, "It is he who has conquered entirely the darkness toward all." So at this time, what it says in the auto-commentary, what it says is, the Prateka Buddhas and Shravakas are free of afflicted delusion, and so for that reason, we assert that they have conquered darkness toward all. We say that they have conquered darkness towards all, but have they conquered it entirely? And the answer is no, they haven't, because they didn't know the qualities of the Buddha, the utterly inaccessible places, and the infinite kinds of things. And so they do have an unafflicted kind of unknowing. And so the Shravaka and Prateka Buddha do not know the qualities of the Buddha. They don't know the things that are inaccessible, because at times things that are inaccessible because of place and the infinite kinds of things. They have these four different kinds of ignorance that they have. There are things that they don't know. They have four causes of ignorance. Now, likewise, when you talk about this as unafflicted ignorance, it's a question of whether you call this a cognitive obscuration or not. Sometimes we call it an obscuration. In the commentary done by Chim Jamyang, it is called unafflicted ignorance, but in actuality, whether or not you call it by the term unafflicted ignorance, call ignorance the term of a cognitive obscuration, the actual only it's not only Mahadeva explained it, But this is also something that the other foundation agrees with this because it's also said in the Treasury of Abhidharma. Now, if we take the Mahadeva says that there are arts that have cognitive obscurations that they have not abandoned. And so in this way, so when we talk about Mahadeva's explanation that the arhats have unafflicted ignorance, because like this thing, like they're the seeds of the Mahayana philosophy from that very time. So I think that this does demonstrate that. So sometimes these days, some who know to Buddhist text to a fair degree, some of them, what they say is the Mahayana is just completely false. Actually, the true Buddhists are the foundation vehicles. There are people who say this. However, when we look at the philosophy of the Mahayana, many of them actually they come out. They find them in the foundation vehicle texts. And you're talking about the talks of the 18 views, but in any case, at the very end, even when we talk about Mahayana saying that there is unafflicted ignorance, that itself is actually a very important part of the Mahayana philosophy that comes out here. And so you can't say immediately that the Mahayana is just made up. You can't say that at all. Actually, within the text of the foundation vehicle, there are many points that are related to the Mahayana philosophy, and so that is also an important thing we need to consider. Now, what's the third? So the third is among the 5 points is this, and what Mahadeva says is, from the time they achieve stream entry, nobles have completely abandoned afflicted doubt. And the reason was because doubt is a discard of the path of seeing, in particular having doubt about the truth. Having doubt about the truth is an obstacle to achieving the path of seeing, and so they have completely limited that. But they do have unafflicted doubts, such as mistaking a scare for a person and feeling doubt. So this is how I explained it. Now the elders, should I say, these are the elders of the senior monks. How they cited him. They said, Mahadeva is a deluded anointing being who doesn't know anything. He doesn't understand the meanings of the Buddha's meaning of the Buddha's words. He doesn't explain them. He says that even nobles have doubt, and so then they disputed him over this. And so now you need to listen to both sides. You have to listen to what Mahadeva said, and you have to listen to what the elder said. You have to listen to both of them, and you need to examine. So normally, what we normally say is we listen to the slanders or the explanations that the elders give of Mahadeva, but we don't really ever think about or don't understand what Mahadeva was saying, and so for that reason, it's important for us to look at both sides. Now, in the Vinaya-vastu, there's one thing that we need to think about. In the Vinaya-vastu, it says is that the Buddha Soso had already abandoned the 3 fetters and entered the stream, entering the state of never falling away from perfect enlightenment. Now, the 3 fetters means the 3 fetters that are limited on the path of seeing, the imaginary personality view, overstreaming discipline and austerity, and doubt about the path of liberation. They do eliminate those. You achieve them at the time when you enter the path of seeing and achieve the level of stream entry. Likewise, the Treasury and its auto-commentary both say that stream enterers have abandoned afflicted doubt, but have not abandoned unafflicted doubt. And then the example of this is, if we compare it to the story of the Arhat Ashvajit, as I mentioned before, it's the same thing, because the noble Ashvajit achieved an Arhat, and he was sitting in solitude in Samadhi, and he was wondering where did the 4 elements cease in the end, and he had a doubt or a question. If he had no doubt at all, then Ashvajit wouldn't possibly have any doubt. So, in generally, It's definitely that noble beings may also have doubt in general. And so Mahadeva's explanation is actually not something I wonder what's something you really need to be that surprised about it when you explain it. Now, the fourth point, and talk about the fourth point, what Mahayana said is, Hariputta and others who have sharp faculties must also follow a spiritual friend to enter the path. And so other students absolutely need someone else to bring them on the path. There's no need to mention that. When he explained this, so within the elders accompanied, they said, oh, Mahadev is this deluded, stupid, ordinary individual, and he can't explain the Buddha's intent. And what he says is that Shariputra and others, those who have sharp faculties, they need someone else to bring them onto the path. And they don't even know that they've achieved the level of option. They don't know that they've achieved it. The reason why they say this is that, as I said before, it is said in the Great Exposition, as I said. Now, the Great Exposition tells the account of this, and gives the account from the perspective of the elders, and it takes their account as the basis. And the explanation they gave of Mahadeva is that they're students of Mahadeva in order to kind of save their face, in order to make them like him. He said that you're a stream enter, you're a non-returner, you're a once returner, and you're an arhat. He must have said this, they say. And when he said this, then the students then started to, if I'm an arhat, I don't even know that I'm an arhat myself. Is there that type of an arhat? They doubted. So they doubted that. And they asked Mahadeva many different questions. Now that's how the elders explain it. That's how they explain the story of Mahadeva. And if we put these two together, then the arhats it's like the arhats don't know anything at all. That's what how can he say this? That's how they explain it. Now, how do I say this? Now, there's another thing we need to think about. Because actually, when we think about what Mahadeva said, is that Shariputra and others need to follow a spiritual friend to enter the path, right? So in general, in this, if we look at the foundation vehicle scriptures, we're going to talk about the eight supreme disciples, like Shariputra is the supreme in Prajna, Kalyana is supreme in miracles, Pali is supreme in Vinaya. It had to be the Buddha who tells them that they're the supreme, because they don't really know that they're supreme. And so the Buddha had to say, you're the greatest in progeny, you're the greatest in miracles. If the Buddha doesn't tell them, then they don't know themselves. That's one reason. So that's one reason why someone else has to attend, why you need someone else to help you bring you onto the path. And the second reason is the foundation for themselves. What they normally say is that for Pratyeka Buddha, in the time of their last lifetime, they can manifest enlightenment in their last lifetime without following a spiritual friend, but the Shravakas must follow a spiritual friend in their last existence. This is what they say. And so this is something that we often think, so that even those in their last existence, even though they're spiritual friends, unless they follow a spiritual friend, then it's difficult for them to achieve a result. And so in this experience, really, if you think about it in this way, saying that you have to follow a spiritual friend is actually something worth considering. The last of the fifth of the 5 views, the last of the 5 points are 5 views, and the last one is kind of long. What the last one says is, so this is saying that the path arises from words, but this doesn't say it exactly. What he says is, so it is those who have trained in the past have practiced for many lifetimes and before they're getting here. So when they're close to achieving a noble state, for example, they hear the Buddha teach on something saying suffering or impotence, just merely hearing that, then many of them achieve a result immediately on hearing that. And for that reason, there are many who are liberated merely on hearing the words of the Buddha. We're hearing the Dharma. And likewise, there are also many who feel such great revulsion for Sama that they say on their own, they say that there's suffering, And there's a suffering, the samsara is the suffering as the world is nature suffering, by the nature suffering. And they call out words they call out words of lament because they understand that the samsara is suffering. They understand from their hearts, and because they understand just without any control, they just say this, and because they then achieve the noble paths. So that is the explanation that Mahadeva gave. But what the elders said is that, well, they slandered him. They said is that Kamadeva committed heinous acts, 3 heinous acts, as I said, as described in the Great Explanation. He didn't do just 1 or just 2. He did 3 heinous actions. And even though he did them, he didn't completely sever the roots of virtue. And so because of that, sometimes because of his rebirth, he was afraid that he was still going to reburn in the lower realms. And he felt a great panic over it. Because he panicked so much, such fear, in the nighttime, he would say, suffering, what am I going to do? He would cry this out in the middle of the night. And when he'd hear this and that his students would hear it, they'd wonder, my teacher must be sick. And the next morning they'd go ask him. They'd go to Mahadev and ask him, oh, were you sick last night? No, I wasn't sick, he'd say. And then the students say immediately, what they say? So then why did you cry out suffering? You cried out and wailed in the middle of the night. What was that? And Mahadeva said, I was young when I entered the path. When I entered the path when I was young, and I did as I wished. I did whatever practice I knew. It was very good and nice. I could do anything at all. And it went very well. But now I'm getting old. And now I'm entering the path, it's got a little bit more difficult. And so if I hadn't cried out the word suffering, if I didn't make that some effort in it, then I wouldn't have roused to the noble path in my being. It's a very long explanation that he gave. That's what they say. Now, there's another thing that we need to think about here. There's one thing we need to think about is that what Mahadeva says is that it's because of words that you receive the noble path. You can't say that's categorically wrong. Because when Ashavija recited Shariputra 1 verse, all dharmas arise from cause and conditions, the Tathagata has taught their cause. The great Shamana has taught this is cessation of these causes. And just by hearing this verse once, then Shariputra achieved noble paths, as it's said in the Vinaya. And so if we look at this, it's through the words, it's through the sound, and just merely hearing that aroused his imprints, and that immediately achieved the noble path. And this happens, right? Likewise, generally when you're practicing the true Dharma, sometimes when you think about the nature of suffering as being suffering, you know from the bottom of your heart that it is suffering by nature. And if you feel like there's no way you can have this feeling that you just can't bear, then naturally it's like you're going to wail or to lament about it. And when you listen to wail, it's a sign that you're actually an expression of really practicing the nature of the Dharma from the depths of your being. So if you're going to say it's bad, that's difficult to say. Sometimes it's difficult to say that everyone who's going to wail like this out of samsara being suffering. It's like difficult to say. If you see that it's possible that you might see that all samsara is suffering by nature and then cry out from that, it's like impossible, right? It's difficult to say that everyone who's done that has committed heinous acts. It's difficult. Particularly in the old days in ancient India, at dawn, there would be bhikshus who was saying impermanence, the life is impermanence, and reciting. There's a tradition that they'd walk around saying everything is suffering and impermanence and so forth. And there are many of the elderly bhikshus who cry out in the middle of the night. They claim that impermanence and suffering. I've heard there are people who say that this happens. So in the middle of the night saying impermanence or suffering and saying that that's bad, that's hard to say that. It's hard to say it's bad. So the reason why what I wanted to say this was, the main point is that to talk about the 5 points or the 5 views of Mahadeva. They are actually connected to many of the points that we talk about in the Treasury of Abhidharma. You can't say that categorically that everything Mahadeva said was impure and wrong. It's difficult to say that. In particular, when we think about it from the perspective of the Mahayana, many of Mahadeva's explanations, if we think about them from the Mahayana perspective, are actually really pretty much on point. Oh, there are quite a few of these, right? And so for this reason, I think that we can't say that we normally say that everything that 5 views of Mahadeva were wrong. This is what we traditionally say. He's a bad person. We say the 5 views were wrong. That's what we think. But it's actually not like that. We need to look at both sides. We need to look at Mahadeva's explanation. We need to look at the elder's explanation. We need to understand both of these. And then, if we examine it, I think that there's a lot that we can understand. Particularly if we add the Mahayana into that, I think there's a lot to understand. Particularly, as I said before, when we talk about the Mahayana, many of its points of philosophy were present in the doctrines before the 18 schools, the split into the 18 schools. So many of these points are there, and so after the 18 schools spread, then there are many things that are related to the Mahayana, and so we can speak about these later. For this reason, we can think about the development of the Mahayana, and this is another point that we need to really pay attention to. If we say that the Mahayana is something that's completely unrelated to the foundation for that it has no roots and that just kind of jumped out of this, we think it's appeared on its own imaginatively. It's not like that. So next, what I would like to speak about is now I'd like to speak about the positions of the Japanese scholar Keisho Tsukamoto. So there's a scholar Tsukamoto Keisho. Speak about his, and then we'll speak, if we have time, we'll speak about the views of Li Jarang. And then there's a summary of that, but I'm not sure, I don't think we'll get through it all tonight. But first of all, I'd like to speak about the Tsukamoto Keishos. Research into the 5 points, Mahadeva, and the split in schools, and so he had many different points. He had many points about this, and I thought I would like to speak about that. Now, this Japanese scholar Keisho Tsukamoto was born in 1929, and in 1965. He published a paper called Mahadeva's Lineage and the Controversy of the Original Split into Schools. Now, the thing that we particularly need to think about in this is that within this paper, he actually had sites, they used 18 different texts as the sources. So he relies on these 18 different sources, these different texts, and at that time, when he was doing his research, these are present, basically all of the texts that were available at the time that he was doing his research. His main thing that he was analyzing was whether the Bhikshu Mahadeva taught the 5 points or not, so to see if it's true or false. This one is in a very highly academic and rigorous way. But because of the time, I don't need to go through it in detail, but I'd like to share like a few of his conclusions. That's what I'd like to show them. Now, within his paper, as I said before, he talked about 18 different texts that he used as a source, and he made a table of them. Now, he made a table, but that table has a problem. And that is that at the time, the technology at the time didn't allow that some of the notes related to the table. There's some notes related to that are missing. And if I tried to find what they are, but I couldn't find them. But generally, we can see you could understand basically what he's saying in the table. Now, so he's using both the sources from the southern and the northern traditions of Buddhism. The southern tradition includes the sources, the Buddhist texts that are preserved in Pali. The northern translation of Buddhism is primarily what's spread into Chinese and also what is present in Tibetan. This is what we call the northern tradition. So he had 18 different texts from the southern and the northern traditions, and he looked for the differences that they have in their explanations of Mahadeva and the 5 points. So now I'd like to, first of all, we need to know what these 18 texts are, so I thought I would show them to you first. Among them, if they're listed by A, B, C, this is the order that he's given, so I'd like to. The first of these is the Great Exposition translated by Tang Xuanzhe from 656 to 659. This is the time of the period of the translation, from 656 to 659. And the sixth is the 18th treatise on the 18 schools, which is actually a different translation of the wheel distinguishing scriptural traditions. This is translated in the fifth chant, and there's some debate about this, but the Japanese scholar himself says that it was translated during the later Qin dynasty. He took this as a given, and so for that, I'm also going to take as a given. But there are a few doubts about that. There is a little bit to think about it. We don't need to speak about that. Then there's also another one called the Treatise on the Differences Between Schools, and it's another translation of the Wheel Distinguished Scriptural Traditions, and it's translated by Mahaparamita around the mid-6th century. Then also there's a scripture there's another one by translation by Xuanzang of the Wheel Distinguishing the Scriptural Traditions called the Treatise on Scripture of the Different Schools. So basically there are 3 different Chinese translations of that text. The Samayabheda Parapratachkana. And so this was Xuanzang was translated in 662. And there's a Tibetan translation of the Wheel Distinguishing the Scriptural Traditions, which was translated by the Bandai Sakyong, probably in the 8th century. That's the time that it was translated. And then there are notes on the treatises on the different schools, which is by Tang Xuanzang's student named Kui Ji. And I've given the time. And then there's a text called The Profound Meaning of the 3 Treatises taught by the Master Jizang of the Sui and Tang dynasties. And there's also the explanation of the treatises of the different schools. It's by Mahaparamita. This is his own. This Mahaparamita had his own translation of the Wheel Distinguished Scriptural Traditions, and this is his own commentary. This is written in the mid-6th century. And there's also Tang Xuanzang's Great Records of Travel to the Western Regions. This was written in 646. Then if we go down, then there are 2 other. The J and K, we don't know what they are. It's not very clear what they are. So as I said before, the paper, during the printing of the paper, there was some difficulty. And so within it, there is just it doesn't list these 2, what these changes. Now the L is what we call the explaining the differences between schools. And this is by the Acharya Bhavya. Now some people say this is Bhavya Viveka, and some people say that it is. But in any case, the one by Acharya Bhavya is also in Tibetan, and this is written in the 6th century, probably. This is what the scholars say. Now, following this is the story of King Ashoka. which is also in Chinese, and it was translated by Anfa Qin in the Western Jin dynasty in between the 281 and 306. Likewise, also the Sutra of King Ashoka, which was translated by Sanghavarman in 512. And there's also the Treatise Distinguishing Qualities, which is a Pali text, I believe. I think it's a Pali text. Now, there's also one in Chinese. And then there's also the Dipavamsa, the history of Sri Lanka. And likewise, there's also the Mahavamsa, which is another history of Sri Lanka. The last one is Samantapasadika, the Vinaya commentary, which is a commentary prepared by Buddhaghosa, which is also in Pali. It was written in the 5th century. But in brief, these are the 18 texts. Now, when comparing these 12, what this scholar made is, actually, I think it's okay to show. Now, there's not really time to explain it in detail. For example, if we look at this, thinking about the way they're explaining the above we have the A, B, C, D, and so forth. These are the 18 letters. These letters are assigned to each of the different texts. Think about in times. When you revise, then you see the times. There are many different explanations. So, if I look in the letter B, what it says is that he was born in 116. In text C, it says he was born sometime between either 116 years after the parinirvana or 160. In D and E, what it says that it was over 100 years after the parinirvana. So that's it, isn't it? Actually, what it says in I is that it appeared for 100 years after that. And so this is the different ways that it calculated. In terms of the dynasty, there are many different dynasties. In A, what it says is during the time of a king, but it doesn't explain who the king was. In B, it says that the king Ashoka. Or in L, it says that it was in the king of Nanda and Mahanpanda. So it's during their time. So these are the different dynasties. When he's speaking about the birthplace of Mahadeva, in A, it says that it's number 10, which is that it is a son of a merchant from Mathura. G says that it's from a captain of Mathura. M and N, these two are the Sri Lankan histories, the Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa. What these two say is that he's born in the southern India, but they don't cite anything else. So these are the differences. Think about the content of his story, the question of whether he's accumulated the heinous acts. And this is when this appears in the circle there. The circle shows the places sources that say that he's done the wicked acts or the three finest, and that shows that if there's no sign, that there's no discussion of him performing working acts or committing for example, A says that he accumulated wicked acts or heinous acts. But B and C, D and E, it does not say that Mahadeva accumulated any wicked acts or heinous acts. They do not teach this. F, G, and those, they say that it is. So that's how it is. In particular, we look at M and N. What these two are the Sri Lankan histories. What they say is that he killed his mother. It doesn't say they did all of these, but there was another woman that he had a transition, had an inappropriate connection with her, and in the end, he killed his own mother. And it only says this. It doesn't say that he committed all three heinous acts. Now, some, what they say is that he had an inappropriate connection with the king, and that is said in the text H. So I need to go back there. What this H is, we have to go back and look at that, or we won't know. The H is this one. What that, so I don't know, look at this, is the explanation of the scripture of the different schools by Master Pradavata, his own commentary, right? And so the particular thing there is that he had an affair with a queen. So in this way, so to the question of whether the different sources do not agree that whether he committed wicked acts or heinous acts, and they don't even agree on which acts he would have committed if they do say that he committed them. The next one, when you think about the different explanations of where he was, where it occurred, then we think about the controversy within the Sangha, and so many say that it's written that he wrote that it's because of his 5 views that the controversy occurred, and some they say that it was because he wrote a treatise. And so where it says that the one say that it's because of his teaching the 5 points that caused the split. Were there the circle? Those are the ones that teach that he had taught the 5 views, and that caused the controversy. Now, in particular, this says an I. That only says that he taught wrong views. It doesn't say that he taught wrong view, the 5 views. K teaches that he objected to expanding the Vinaya discipline. And so for that reason, and so it's saying that Mahadeva that he objected to expanding the Vinaya discipline, but it does not mention that he taught the 5 verses. So this is the detail that we see. When we think about the original split of the Sangha into 2 schools, there are many different views. Now, we don't need to go through that in detail. And the next one is discussing the different things. So the leaking boat, the person who makes the commands, whether the displayed views, and whether they're flying to Kashmir and so forth. So these are the different ways they're described in the different schools. So we don't need to go through them in detail. So you understand? So in this way, he taught a lot about it. Now, the main point that we have to talk about here, there are a couple of points. And the first of these points is the question of whether there is a connection between Mahadeva and the 5 points. Now, the Japanese scholar Keisho Tsukamoto, when he's doing his research, he finds, looking at the different the related manuscripts, we found that actually 12 different versions of who Mahadeva was. There are 12 different versions of Mahadeva. But I don't need to go through them all because it just wastes the time. But the main thing is, if you think of the Mahadeva who taught the 5 views. So what we're taking interest in is the Mahadeva who taught the 5 points of the 5 views. So the question of whether Mahadeva taught the 5 points or not. So when you talk about the 5 points of the 5 views, we have several Sarvastivada and Abhidharma texts that we need to look at. So there's a text of the Ashtaskanda Sutra, which was translated into Chinese in 383. And likewise, there is also the Jnanaprasthana, which is translated between 657 and 660. And so this is a very important Sarvastivada text. And both of them, when they do talk about the 5 views of the 5 points. They say that they're wrong views. However, in both of them, Yesterday, I told you the account of Mahadeva. Where that came from is the text called The Great Exposition, the very well-known text of the Exposition School. So this Great Exposition is an account of Mahadeva committing three heinous acts. But this account, there's a question, is it because of that account? When we talk about it is because of Mahadeva teaching that, but that's not mentioned in the Ashtaskanda Shastra, the Dhanaprasthana. Likewise, there are actually three different translations of the Great Exposition into Chinese. Now, in Tibetan, we didn't have it before. Later, in modern days, it was translated from Chinese into Tibetan. It's almost complete. It's almost all complete. There's a Chinese master named Fa Zun who translated it. But in the Chinese translation, there are actually three different translations. One of these was translated by the Indian master Sanghabhuti in the year 389. And what it says, within that, it talks about the chapter on prajna. It talks about the 5 views, the Mahadeva's 5 views, and the place where that comes is in that chapter of the chapter on prajna. But in the 389 translation of the Great Exposition, there's nothing about it in the chapter on prajna. So it's unnecessary to say. It doesn't have that section. But there was, during the Northern Liang dynasty, there was another Indian master. There's a master who came from abroad. His name called Buddhavarman. And there's also an old translation of the Great Exposition that he did. And this translation was probably made between 425 and 27. And within what it says, this does have the chapter on the chapter on prajna. And so the question, does it include, you look into the 5 points, and is there something we can look for there? However, but when we look there to see, it teaches the chapter on prajna, but it does not talk about the 5 points. However, there's an Ashtaskanda Shastra, the treatise in 8 chapters that does teach the 5 years. It does teach about them. So that's translated in 4th century. It is in that 4th century, that translation text was translated in the 4th century, but it should be in that 8th century, 5th century translation, but it's not. The 5th century translation of the Great Exposition, that old translation, does not teach the 5 views. And so for that reason, what we can hypothesize from this is that the Great Exposition was being compiled. There was a time when it was being compiled. It was not. It was in the original manuscripts. They probably did not describe the 5 views in Mahadeva, because if they were, they would have to have been in the 5th century, in the manuscript that's translated in the 5th century. But later, after the Great Exposition was completed, only then did they insert the discussion of the 5 views of Mahadeva. So I think if you look at this table, you can understand. So here it is. If you look at this, the first is when you compare these Abhidharma texts, the first one is the treatise in 8 chapters. The second is entering wisdom of Dhanaprasthana. There's the old translation of the Great Exposition and the new translation of the Great Exposition. And if you look about whether we have them, there should probably be the 5, talking about the 5 views. That's where the story of Mahadeva would be. The 5 views, what is taught in, it's taught in the treatise in 8 chapters, the Jnana, and also it does 55. So in the very old translation of the Great Exposition, it's not there because not there. Now, if the shut up chapter on shut up project is there, then you can look at it. So if you look at in the new translation of the Great Exposition, the second is the treatise on the five aspects, and this talks about the five views. And that's where they are taught. But if you look at the old translation, that section on the five aspects is not there. And because it's not there, then the five views are not taught. So the teaching on the five views is taught in three of these texts, but it's not in the old translation, the Great Exposition. The second point is the story of Mahadeva. There's the story, the account of Mahadeva. The account that he appeared, that he taught committed three heinous acts, and that he then taught the five views, and he caused the controversy in the Sangha and so forth. And where this is explained is in the new translation of the Great Exposition. It's translated during the 7th century. It's only taught in that one. But the earlier aspects, whether the treatise in 8 chapters, or the Jnanaprasthana, or the old translation of the Great Exposition, do not teach it at all. Do you understand? And so for this reason, the account of Mahadeva was probably added later. So we have a great suspicion that it must have been. Likewise, the five views were probably added later. Now, these are all the translations of Chinese. Now, if we look at the Pali text from the Vibhajyavada school, there's an important text called the Kathavatu. It's called the chapters on sayings, the chapter on worth. And there's a second chapter that's called the discussion of degenerate views. And this describes the five views. And it says that they're wrong views that are taught by other schools. And this Kathavatu, there's a commentary on it by Buddhaghosa. He's a very important, a 5th century important master of the Pali, of the Theravada school. And he has a commentary on it. And in this one, he talks about the 5 points. This is the position of the Eastern Mountain School and the Western Mountain School, the Purva Shaila and the Appara Shaila. Now, what these are both of them actually the Mahasanghika school. So that they're positions of the Mahasanghika view. And within the Mahasanghika, they're part of the Antaka school. They're the positions of that school, the Antaka school. However, when we talk about the 5 points of the 5 views, they're taught as being teachings of the Mahasanghika school, but they aren't. But there's no mention of that they're being made by Mahadeva or related to Mahadeva. For these reasons, we can hypothesize that just as when we look at the Chinese translation of Abhidharma text and the Pali texts, when you examine them, what we can understand is that the Great Exposition says that there is Mahadeva who accumulated the heinous acts, that he taught the 5 points. And due to this kind of controversy and dispute within the Sangha that caused it to split into 2 things. If combining all 3 of them, the Mahadeva, the 5 points in the account, they combined all these 3 and made this into a new account. This is only found in the Great Exposition, but prior to that, it was did not exist. If it's during the time of the Great Exposition, they made up this account during the time of the Great Exposition. Before that, other than talking about the 5 points, there is no point. There's no explanation that the Mahadeva made the 5 points, and that because of them there is the dispute in the Sangha. There's no explanation of that. Likewise, when you think about the 18 different schools, the most important school is Vasamitra's wheel distinguishing the different schools. So it was written by the master Vasumitra, This describes about the 5 points, and they're said to be positioned as the Ekavyavavakara, Lokotaravada, the Kukuchita, the Bahashrita, Haimavata school, and other schools. So these are all, well, they're also the sub-schools of the Mahasangika. Likewise, there's also there's Bhavya, the one that some people say is Bhavya Viveka. There is the explanation of the differences among the schools that we have in Tibetan. And what it says in there is that the 5 points are the position of the Ekavyavaharika school. And most of these 5 points, when you look, so they're basically saying that they're all assertions of the Mahasangika school. Vinita Davis' concise teaching on the separate schools said the 5 teaching points are positioned of the Lokotara Veda school. So in general, we can say that many researchers say that the 5 points or the 5 views are a position of sub-schools among the Mahasangikas. And this is these schools accept them. While those who are under the Stavadivada tradition identify them as wrong views, they do not accept them. It's okay to say this. So when you think about this, you can't say that there's no relation to the disputes within the school. You can't say that. However, there's also the question of whether Mahadeva taught them. So that's a very different situation. So next, what I'd like to do is speak about the second point. So whether there's a relation between Mahadeva, the 5 points, and the split into schools. What I mentioned before was the question of whether the 5 points were taught by Mahadeva or not. The next thing I'd like to speak about is whether there's a relationship between Mahadeva, the 5 points, and the original split into schools. Now, when you think about that, when you're talking about how the original split occurred, the most important text on this is what we have in the Tengyur, the wheel distinguishing the scriptural traditions. I think many of you have not read that. Most of us don't even look at the texts that are in the Kangyur and the Tengyur. We look at the Vajrasankara and the Heart Sutra and a few other sutras, but basically we don't look at them, right? We think there's no point. We think that it isn't going to benefit us, and that's going to benefit us, so we don't read them. However, there's this text that we'll distinguishing the scriptural traditions. And if you're studying the 18 schools, this is actually a very important text. Now, here another thing that we need to pay attention to is that this text, the wheel distinguishing the scriptural traditions, there are 4 different translations of it. Now, 3 of these are into Chinese, and 1 is into Tibetan. There's only 1 translation into Tibetan, but there are 3 different translations in Chinese. If you look at this, the first translation, the earliest translation was translated during the later Qing dynasty, and it's called the Treatise on the 18 Schools. There's also a translation by Paramartha called the Treatise on the Differences Between Schools. And then there's a Tibetan tradition, and then there's, they say that there's a connection between the 5 points and the split into the sub-schools, but they do not mention Jahavdeva's school. If you look at them in detail, they do not mention the name Mahadeva. So the point here is that we have Mahadeva, the 5 points, and the split in the original split. We have to talk about this connection. But looking at the Chinese translations, the later Qin and the Paramartha translation, the Chinese translation, there's the Tibetan translation in all 3 of these. There is no mention of them saying that Mahadeva taught these, and that or it may say that they're but it talks about the split into sub-schools. The Mahadeva itself did split in different sub-schools, and the point of this was that there's a Mahadeva who taught the five values. And that's the point that they say. If we look at it in, I think that's now the later Chin mentions a later Mahadeva, it just gives the name, but it does not explain the 5 points. But Paramatha's translation does not touch about it in the earlier Mahadeva, the one who caused the original split, doesn't speak about him at all. The Tibetan translation does not mention the earlier Sadeva, but does mention the later Mahasadeva. We've talked about it later in the earlier and later Mahadeva. I'll explain this again later. So this is one difference here. The second thing is that in 662, Tan Xuanzang translated the text and named it, titled it, "The Treatise and the Scriptures, the Different Schools." This is the latest, newest translation of the wheel, differentiating the scriptural traditions. And what here it says that the split was related to Mahadeva. And it says that the way that it says this is actually the same as in Xuanzang's own translation of the 65th, the translation of the Great Exposition that he had done between 656 and 659. So when talking about Mahadeva and the 5 points, he's talking about when he's talking about he says that he taught the 5 views, and because of that, there is a split into schools. The original split of the Buddhist community into 2 schools. So before that, the Sangha was unified, but there was an event that occurred, and due to which it had been split into 2 schools. Since the first, and because of the first split, we call it the original split. So splitting in the condition for that, splitting into 2. So what was the position? It's because of the Mahadeva teaching these things. And so this comes in Tan Xuanzang's translation of the treatise on the scriptures of the different schools. That's the only place where it's mentioned. In the previous translations, the one about Paramartha or says that it is a condition for the split into sub-schools, but not about the original split. And the earlier one doesn't even just mentions the name, but it doesn't say that he taught the 5 views. And so this is one difference that occurs. Now, when we look at the Tibetan translation of the wheel, distinguishing the scriptural traditions, I think that there's some problems with the Tibetan translation when I look at it. I think that there are some words that are missing there. Seems like when I look at it, first, when it was printed, the time it was printed, that there are many different parts that they're missing from that. I think that actually there's some text that's missing. If the text were not missing, then actually, then I think that would match the manuscript that Tan Xuanzang also translated. So basically, Tan Xuanzang's translation of the wheel distinguishing the traditions says that there are 2 Mahadevas. There's an earlier Mahadeva, that around 100 years after the parinirvana of the Buddha. So there's one Mahadeva at that time, 100 years after the parinirvana, and then around 200 years after the parinirvana, around that time, there's also another Mahadeva. So there's an earlier and a later Mahadeva, and that's the reason why we talk about an earlier and a later. But the earlier, and what he did was, he caused the original split of the Buddhist Sangha into two schools. That's why, because it was he who made it necessary for that to happen. Now, who made the second? Well, the second Mahadeva said 200 years after the Buddha's parinirvana, the original split had occurred. There are the 2 schools. But the second Mahadeva, he once again taught the 5 views. And because of teaching the 5 views, then the Mahasanghaka also split into many schools. They split into many And the cause for that was because of the later Mahadeva. Now, following that, there is the text that the Xuanzang student Kui Ji wrote in 662 called Notes on the Treatise of the Scriptures of the Different Schools. Now, this is the new translation by Tang Xuanzang of the Wheel of Distinguishing Scriptural Traditions. And he probably taught them to his students, and his student Kueji, took notes. And so it's basically Kueji's note on it. And what it says here, it says not only it quotes the Great Exposition, he says that the king is meant to Mahadeva. Now, the treatise on the scriptures of different schools does not explain who that is, but the king, Mahadeva says, when asked who the king is, he says that it's King Ashoka. The reason he explains it thus is that it's because he was taking the Great Exposition that had been translated by Tang Xuanzang and using that as the basis to translate the Wheel differentiating the scriptural traditions, because that was because there it's clearly written that it's Ashoka. Now the Wheel to distinguish scriptural traditions mentions that there's a king, so this added to Tang Xuanzang's translation of that text and put it there. And so Kueji says that that is the king, it's the King Ashoka. Now, what this shows is the different translations of the Wheel distinguishing translation. It talks about the four different translations, and among them, we see that in some translations, Mahadeva there's only one translation that says that there's a connection between Mahadeva and the original split of schools, because that is in Tang Xuanzang's translation. The others have no discussion of Mahadeva causing the original split of schools. Most of them say that he was the cause of the split into the sub-schools, but not of the original split into schools. Next, what it says in the Southern transmission manuscripts of the Southern transmission, this is another point that we need to know. Within the Southern tradition, as I said before, the 5 views of the 5 points are taught to be positions of the Mahasangika school. Not just Mahadeva school, but they're also this position is the Mahasangika school. This is one of the original schools, the root schools. And so this, in particular, is the positions of the Purvashayala and the Uparashayala schools. And the way we know this, there's a sutra called a text of polytext called the Sutra of Shariputra's question. It was translated into Chinese during the later Qin times, 3 and 420. So this is a text from that period, and what it says, the Sutra of Shariputra is actually like it teaches in terms of taught us a prophecy saying that after my nirvana, this will happen. And what it says is that in the 200 years after my parinirvana, the Mahasangika school will arise because of different treatises. So when will the Mahasangika appear? So after Mai means the Buddha. 200 years after Mai, the Buddha's parinirvana, there will be this Mahasangika school. 300 years later, because of different scriptures, there will once again be Mahadeva school, the Chaitya school, and the Uttarashila school. So at that time, What it says in the Sutra Shariputra's question, it says that in place of the Purva Shaila, it says Mahadeva school. And so for that reason, when you talk about Mahadeva, and talk about the Andakaya schools. So in generally, in the southern tradition, what they say is that they're the Purva Shaya schools, the Chitta schools, and the Attara Shaya schools are actually, in general, part of the Andaka schools. So Andaka is a region of Andaka, a region area of southern India. They're named after this. So they're schools from that region, and so for that reason they're called the schools, the Andaka schools. So when they talk about the Eastern Mountain or Purva Shaila and the Uttara Shaila and the Appara Shaila, then these are names. These are also sub-schools of the Andaka schools, which is named after the region of Andaka or Andhra in southern region, in southern India. When we think about the events that I've mentioned already, think about Mahadeva, the relation between Mahadeva and the original split is primarily taught by the Sarvastivada school. The ones who say it is the Sarvastivadins. And among them is the Kashmir Sarvastivada, the Sarvastivada from the region of Kashmir. And so there's something that we need to think about here. If we examine it, and talk about the dispute between the Sthaviravada and Mahasangha, might actually probably be a dispute between the Sarvastivada and the Mahasangha. And the second is why did Mahadeva have to be inserted into the sequence of events of the original split into the schools? Why did they have to insist on putting Mahadeva there? And so before that, we need to understand that this is a question of whether it's a Sthaviravada and Mahasangha, or is it actually a dispute between the Sarvastivada and the Mahasangha schools? Because who is it taught the five views? It was the Mahasangha. And who is it said that they were wrong views? It was Sarvastivada. So when you say this, instead of being a dispute between the Sthaviravada and the Mahasangha, wouldn't it be better to say that it's a dispute between the Sarvastivada and the Mahasangha? So one thing that we need to understand here, first of all, is what is the connection between the Sarvastivada and the Mahasangha? The Sarvastivada and the connection between the Sarvastivada and the Mahasangha schools is according to our Sarvastivada accounts, and particularly within the in the Mula Sarvastivada's minor topics of Vinaya, it says that the person who spread the teachings in Kashmir was the Arhat Madhyantaka. According to the history is from Sri Lanka, the Sinhalese history. It said that the Arhat Madhyantaka was sent by Moggaliputta Tissa. He sent Moggaliputta Tissa sent Madhyantaka to Kashmir and Gandhara to spread the Dharma. The one who sent him was Aggaliputta Tissa. Moggaliputta Tissa was sent many great masters and elders to spread Dharma to different areas of India, and among them was this Mahadeva. So among those, he was sent to southern India, but there was also Madhyantaka. Madhyantaka was sent by Moggaliputta Tissa to Kashmir and Gandhara. But on our histories, it doesn't say that. Our histories say that Madhyantaka is basically in the sequence of elders. It says that he's a student of Ananda. He was a Dharma friend. He was ordained at the same time as Shranavasta. So the accounts in the northern tradition and the southern tradition don't match. Likewise, as I've already said, according to the Sri Lankan histories, it said Madhyantaka was sent to Kashmir, but there's also Mahadeva, the great Arhat Mahadeva. And where Mahadeva taught, he was sent to the southern India, to a place called Mahisa Mandala. So these days, it's in the area of Mysore these days. So he's sent to the present-day Maharashtra. So this is about the same time. There's the Mahadeva who was sent to southern India, and there's also the Madhyantaka who was sent to Kashmir. According to the Sri Lankan histories, were contemporaries. And what this shows is that there's the Mahasangaka and the Mahasanga and Andhaka. When he sent the one who's being sent, when Mahadeva was sent south, he was first he was in Pataliputra, and it's probably at the time of Ashoka. According to the Sri Lankan histories, it was during the reign of Ashoka. The capital is Pataliputra. And so in the beginning, there was Mahasangaka Senda, and so they sent the Bhikshu Mahadeva down to Andhaka. And so he probably started a Mahasangaka community in southern India. So the spread of the Dharma to Kashmir and the spread of the Dharma to Mahisa Mandala in southern India, according to the Sri Lankan histories, were both during the Maurya dynasty. And so for that reason, you talk about the time of the original split in the schools, whether it was during the king of Kalashoka, during the Nanda dynasty, or during the reign of Mahapadma, whichever time it was. According to the Great Exposition, during the original school, the Sthaviravadas went to Kashmir. And now this is something that the researchers have to doubt. There's no point. Because at this point, there's a question of whether Mahadeva was even alive at that time. If there's a connection between Mahadeva and the time, then it's most reasonable to say that Mahadeva was connected with the 5 years at the time of the Maurya dynasty. But when you think about the question of Mahadeva and because of Mahadeva, the Arhats needing to go to Kashmir, in the Sarvastivada accounts, this probably has a different name for written to that. The reason is this, that the Great Exposition was prepared by in the Kashmiri Sarvastivada. And their main aim in reciting this is they wanted to make a connection between themselves and the Sthaviravada, the elders from the time of the original split into schools. So it's saying that so we have the tradition, we hold the tradition of those elders from the time of the original split into schools. So try to give them like an authentic schools to show that they have a real source and they made up this history. And in particular, the Great Exposition, the text of the Great Exposition was compiled at a time when the Kashmiri Sarvastivada were extremely powerful. Now at that time, there are the Sarvastivada, Kashmiri Sarvastivada, and there are the Mathura Sarvastivada. And we talk about the Kashmiri Sarvastivada, and then there are the Nyokpas, and they don't get along quite so well. Because at that time, the Sarvastivada was actually the strongest of the different schools, and the Sarvastivadis in the region of Mathura weren't so powerful. It was the Kashmiri Sarvastivada who were most powerful. So for this reason, we see that the Kashmiri exposition schools, you see that many of the Kashmiri Sarvastivada schools have been, many of their views have been inserted into Sarvastivada scriptures, but not so many, because the Kashmiri Sarvastivada positions were so powerful, so their positions were inserted more frequently into those Sarvastivada scriptures. And this is what many researchers have researched. This is what they find. And so, because the Sarvastivada was very large, and so there are many different parts of this. There's sort of different sort of sub-schools within it. Some in Kashmir, Saraswata, there's Mathura. And so there's a little bit difference between these differences, but it's primarily the positions of the Kashmiri's exposition were the most important, or considered the most important, because they were the most powerful at that time. Now, maybe there's another thing that we need to pay some attention to is, as I mentioned before, there's a sutra of the Shariputra's question. And it says something very particular, the thing that we've never heard before. And what's never heard that? I think it's better if I read it. So this is the Sutra Shariputra's questions. It was translated during the later Qin dynasty in like the 4th or 5th century. And says, at that time, an elder bhikshu who seeks fame and is argumentative will alter my Vinaya, that is the Buddha's Vinaya, adding more to it and lengthening it. We will call the basket of Vinaya compiled by Kashyapa the Mahasangika Vinaya. Later, someone else will search for and compile it, adding many new precepts that were not there before and deceiving many new monks. They will start their own school, and there will be dispute. At that time, a Gipsha will ask the king to decide the matter. The king will convene both schools and spread out white and black counting sticks. He will announce, if you prefer the old Vinaya, take a black counting stick. If you prefer the new Vinaya, take a white counting stick. At that time, a few tens of thousands took black counting sticks, but none more than 100 sticks took white sticks. The king will think these are all the teachings of the Buddha, but it is not right for them to stay together because the different positions, they will be more adherents to the old Vinaya, so they will be called Mahasangikas. The new Vinaya had fewer students, so they'll be called elders, so they'll be called the Staviravada. This is what it says, right? So here, this Sutra Shariputra's questions does not talk about the 5 points or the 5 views, and says that there will be an elder who will appear. As an elder means someone with elder things, but he was someone who likes to be famous, who likes to debate. And what he will do will change the Buddha's Vinaya and make it more, to increase the Vinaya, expand it. During the first council, Kashyapa, you say that he will call this by the name. This is the Mahasangika, the Vinaya. And then he'll make up a new Vinaya, and he'll compile this new Vinaya, and he'll add many previously inexistent views and add them. And not only will he add these new rules, what he'll do is he'll have all of his party. He'll start his own school separately, the people who support him. And because of this, they'll create disharmony in the school. And then when they do this, one bhikshu will go to the king and say, our Sangha are all just having dispute. The elders are doing all these things and causing a discord. So please, you decide it. And so the king will say, he gathered both of the schools. He said, your Vinayas don't agree. The elders are making this new one, and even longer, even more, with more rules. So those of you who like the old schools, you should take one of the black counting sticks. Those of you who like the white counting sticks. So basically, you have to look at how many people. When they look at how many there are several tens of thousands of people who had the black sticks, and who liked the old. There were only a few hundred, or not even 100, who liked the old one. And so the king thought, so in general, it's all the same in being the teachings of the Buddha, but because they have different interests or different convictions, they have different things that they fall into this conflict. And so if you stay together, you can't say, you don't stay together. You aren't getting along. So there's no point in you staying in the same place. No point in you always fighting. He probably said that, and after they said that, then the Sangha split into schools. One was the people who liked the old vinegar. This is the Mahasangika school. And there are also the people who liked the old, the new ones. There are fewer of them, but most of them were elders, and for that reason they're called the Staviravadas, or the school of the elders. So this is something that we've never heard before, right? So if you think about talking the Mahasangika school, the condition that caused the split of the schism is the increase in the increase of the Vinaya, or the expansion of the Vinaya. Likewise, also Master Bhavya's explanation on there's the wheel distinguishing the scripture traditions. What it says there, as I said before, is that there will be someone named Bhadra will teach the 5 points. So Bhadra here, is meant here. This is an individual named Sangha, he'll teach the 5 points. Because of him teaching, that will be the original split in the 5 schools. So it's saying that there is an account of how there was a picture other than Mahadeva who taught the 5 points and caused the original split into schools. So if we wanted to summarize this, what happened is we've got this great exposition, the Mahavibhasha. The authors of this text, or perhaps when the Great Exhibition was originally written, it didn't mention Mahadeva, but later masters wanted to add this account of Mahadeva. We can't know which it was, but in any case, the account of Mahadeva at the Great Exhibition is that just before that, so there's an account of the split of the Mahasangikas into the sub-schools. So this preceded the Great Exposition, because this is in Vasamitra's Wheel Distinguishing Scripture Traditions, which says it is because the split into sub-schools of the Mahasangika was caused by Mahadeva and his 5 points. And so this account was already present before the Great Exposition was written. So they took this as, the authors of the Great Exposition took this as an example. And they used Mahadeva and they inserted into the account of the original split into schools. So they inserted it. And once they've inserted it, then Tang Xuan's, when he translated the Wheel Distinguishing the Scriptural Traditions, the difference before, it had this, it also, the translation that it did, and so he translated in the 7th translated the manuscript that he had. It's possible that it had already been changed, and there was inserted that the account that of Mahadeva started causing the original split was probably inserted there. And when you translate it, what happened there? It said created the connection between Mahadeva causing the original split into schools. So if you think about this Japanese scholar's presentation, we're talking the histories of the original split of Buddhism into schools, and particularly the account of Mahadeva, not a single, they're like a sectarian account that heavily influenced by each school that developed over time. And they're not a single critical historical account, but each school is influenced by their own sectarian views. The Mahasangha suggested the 5 views, as they take that they're reasonable. This is Vastavada school that the 5 views are unreasonable, that they're wrong views. And when they do this, then primarily, when they're writing down the histories, the people who are writing this, no matter, it depends on which school. They're writing from the Sarvastivadi is saying that the 5 views are wrong, the Mahadeva is a bad, wicked. The Mahasangha, when they write it, they say the 5 views are good, they're reasonable. And Mahadeva was a great venerable picture. This is what they write. But the main point is that so it really depends on who's writing the histories, which school is writing the histories. There's a long history of the long period that went between when the histories were written in the original split, and so there was many things in there, and many things were added to the account of this, and so for that reason, it's not certain what happened. So I think that's probably enough. I think it's a good place to leave it tonight. Actually, it's a very complicated. So I think we'll speak about the Korean scholar Lee Ja-rang's position the next time.